What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and this one is some of my final thoughts ahead of Game Week 27. So I'm going to go through the latest team news that we've got, benching headaches, answer some of your questions, and take a quick look at my team as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with the team news. For Chelsea, Semenyo was asked about Palmer and James's minutes. He said it's based on day by day, not just those two, but how each player feels. They both trained really well today. So if any of you are thinking about going for a 1 week punt on Cole Palmer, he's probably absolutely fine. You could bring him in and just hold him, even though it's Arsenal away in 28. But either way, I think he's almost guaranteed to start this week against Burnley. With Reece James, some of you might have him in your squad. I'd say there's a pretty good chance he's going to start against Burnley as well, but generally there is no way I would be buying him right now. And then Kukurea is out with a hamstring injury. Rosenior didn't say how long that would be, but I expect him to be out for at least 2 to 3 weeks. So if you've got him, he's a definite sell. For Liverpool, Frimpong is out this week, but should be back for Game Week 28. Endo's out for a long time, and Gomez should be ready to start. So for those of you that have got Szoboszlai, or are thinking about maybe bringing him in, if Gomez can stay fit, which he almost never does, but if he could, and once Frimpong's back, that does mean Szoboszlai will play more in midfield. So he does look like quite a good value pick with the fixtures Liverpool have got coming up. Isak likely to be back with a squad end of March / start of April. So if you're thinking about Ekitike, he's basically got no competition for that number 9 spot. Now, that doesn't mean he'll definitely start every single game, especially when Champions League starts back up. But generally, Ekitike is going to play a lot. And I think because of the fixtures Liverpool have got, he looks like a pretty good pick right now. A lot of people thinking about selling Ekitike, by the way. Don't really get that. Maybe for Thiago, but in most cases I would just hold on to Ekitike. Leeds, Stack has returned to training. He's obviously a very cheap midfielder, under 5 million. Leeds have got pretty good fixtures from Game Week 29 onwards. So if you've got him in your squad, might be worth holding on to him. And then for Bournemouth, Tavernier is back in training. Might be available for Game Week 27, if not Game Week 28. He's one worth keeping an eye on because Bournemouth's fixtures are pretty good. We think we pretty much know he's first choice penalty taker with no Clivert because he took one before he got injured. And he's only 5.3 million. So next week, if you're looking for a cheap midfielder like Utara, for example, a lot of people are considering right now, Tavernier might be an option. Preferably, for me to buy him in 28, he would have to get some minutes this week, but it's looking good right now. So I probably should have led the video with this team news, but for Man City, Pep Guardiola was asked, is Haaland fully fit? And he basically nodded to say yes. So should be no issues there. I'd be shocked if he doesn't start against Newcastle at home. I would expect the minutes to be good, and he's a really good option to hold on to. Does that mean you can't sell him? No, and there's a question about selling him to Salah later on, but I think for most people it just makes sense to hold on to him and probably captain him if you don't have Cole Palmer. For Palace, Glasner was asked whether he wants to remain at Palace until the end of the season, and he said, let's see. Which is a bit of a weird, the whole situation right now is so weird because we know he's leaving at the end of the season. He's literally said, it seems like he wants to go before, but he doesn't necessarily want to walk. Now that might not be true, but that's how it comes across. The whole situation just feels a bit toxic. There was booze and stuff during the European game midweek, so the fans were booing him, etc. Not great right now. I think generally with Palace players, if you've got them, you're just holding them for Wolves at home. So if you went for Minoz, Sarr, Strand Larsen, etc., not a major issue. I think you just play them. It's a pretty good fixture. But I wouldn't be buying them right now. It's 2 away games straight after against Spurs, Man United. They blank in Game Week 31. Probably just an avoid unless you went there already. Mateta should be back in 2 to 3 weeks. So if you are someone that went for Strand Larsen, he should be fine for minutes until then. And Lacroix went off with an injury midweek. Now, from what I can tell, Glasner wasn't asked about him during the press conference ahead of this weekend's match. He was asked about him after the game in Europe midweek, but obviously it was just after the match. So they didn't have a full assessment, but he didn't make it sound good. I'd be shocked if Lacroix starts against Wolves. I think he's going to be out for a few weeks, but I don't know that with 100% certainty. But if he's in your team and you really needed to play him this week, you probably need to think of plan B, whether that's selling him to someone else or using a bench player instead. For Newcastle, Botman could be fit, so I guess that adds another defender to the mix. Visser and Miley are both out, so I guess that's good for Voltemada, but I mean, no one should be going there right now. And then Bruno G also out, which just doesn't help Newcastle overall. I think with Newcastle, do people even own Gordon and Voltemada at this point? You might have Chow or like Lewis Hall. I think they're probably both okay to hold on to if you can bench them in the more difficult games. But overall, I think for most people that don't have Newcastle, you're probably just coming back to it in game week 31, maybe as a 1 week punt against Sunderland at home. And then for Brighton, I included this because it's just nice to see. Solly March could return to the squad. It feels like a very long time since we've seen him play regularly. Some of you that have been playing FPL for a while will know that some of us are still owed a goal from Solly March, but we won't get into that right now. But it's nice that he could return to the squad. For Arsenal, Mikel Arteta confirmed there's no new injury concerns and also said that Havertz and Odegaard are in contention to play and that Trossard is available. There was a question that I had basically saying, is Martinelli worth keeping if Trossard's injured? Well, he's available, apparently. It doesn't mean that Martinelli won't start, of course, but Trossard will have an impact on his minutes over the long term. For Sunderland, Xhaka is more or less trained fully this week, so he's available for selection just in case any of you kept hold of him. Probably not worth buying, but if you've got him, he could be playable against Fulham at home. And then if you've got Reinildo, he's apparently out for 3 to 4 weeks. So if you were relying on starting him a few times over the next few weeks, that's going to need a transfer. For Man United, there's not really that much interesting news. Mount is getting closer. They've got to be patient. De Ligt is a little bit behind Mount. For FPL, doesn't really have a massive impact. Mount's not going to be starting anytime soon. And if you've got Maguire, I guess the De Ligt news is quite good. And then for Aston Villa, Cash is fit for game week 27. I know a few people were wondering about that, and he's taken part in the last 2 training sessions, so should be okay, and I'd expect him to start against Leeds. So let's go through some benching headaches for game week 27. As always, the player further up the list is the one that I think you should start if you've got a decision between 2 of these players. Starts it in Burmo, then goes down to Timber. Timber is ahead of Saliba, then it's all the way down to the bottom at Krupi. So top left down, then top right down. So right at the top, in Burmo and Ekatike, a few people mentioned them. I mean, honestly, anyone that's got in Burmo and Ekatike in their team, I can't imagine there's actually any decision about benching them. But if you have got a decision, you should probably play them. Then I've got 3 defenders: Gabriel, Spurs away, Munoz, Wolves at home, and Chalobah, Burnley at home. It did cross my mind about whether to put Chalobah further up, because he's been really good for defensive contributions, especially under Rosenior, and it's obviously a great fixture. But Munoz is so attacking, and despite what happened in the double game week, Gabriel is still great. Like, anyone with Gabriel should not be benching him, in my opinion. So I think Gabriel, then Munoz, then Chalobah. Hopefully Munoz can get an attack and return because I own him. Then Njai against Man United at home, penalties. Calvert-Lewin versus Villa away, penalties. Then Rice versus Spurs away, ahead of Wilson against Sunderland away. Then I've gone for Cunha against Everton away. Now, if I thought Cunha was going to play 85 to 90 minutes, I'd probably put him a bit higher up, ahead of Rice, maybe ahead of Calvert-Lewin. But he's always the one that gets subbed early. And is there a slight chance that Šeško could start at some point? I guess there's potential for that. I think it's a very slim chance for what it's worth. Like, my prediction would be in Burmo, Cunha, Ahmad, front 3 against Everton. But either way, Cunha always seems to get subbed early. So I'd have him a little bit lower down. But if you wanted to put him ahead of Wilson or Rice, I wouldn't debate that or argue it too much. Then Dewsbury Hall against Man United at home. Then it's basically the rest of the defenders. I did think about putting Dewsbury Hall a little bit lower down, but I think he's quite a good option most weeks, and it is a home game. I'm not quite sure what to make about Man United. I think they are looking good under Carrick, although the last game wasn't great. Defensively, though, I'm still not quite sure. So I've got Dewsbury Hall ahead of most of the other defenders, but you could put him further down if you wanted to. Timber against Spurs away, then Saliba against Spurs away. Despite what happened in the double, Arsenal was still really good. And they're going to be one of the best chances at a clean sheet this week. Timber does have attacking potential. I don't think we should overreact to that too much, as I'll discuss in a minute. So Timber, then Saliba, then Van Dijk against Forest away. You can absolutely make an argument that Van Dijk's better over the next 4 to 5 weeks, but this week specifically, I'd probably play Timber ahead of Van Dijk. Then Mukiele, Fulham at home, then Richards, Wolves at home, then Alderete against Fulham at home. The reason Mukiele's above Richards because his attacking threat and DEFCON's just pretty good. And if Palace are going to be without Lacroix, and obviously they've lost Gay recently as well, not ideal. But Alderete's not as attacking as Mukiele, so I've put him just below Richards. Then O'Reilly against Newcastle at home. He's a really tricky one to position. Because if he's going to play in midfield, I really like him, even though he's playing against Newcastle. But if Pep changes things up, does he definitely go and play left back, or does Aït-Nouri play there and O'Reilly get a bit of a break? It's hard to know. For what it's worth, I don't see O'Reilly coming out of the team, but I had to put him a bit lower down because of slight doubts. And also, it's a difficult game for a clean sheet anyway. Then Joachim Andersen against Sunderland away, then Senesi against West Ham away. I've spoken about that for my own team a little bit this week. I'm going to play Andersen ahead of Senesi. Then Hill versus West Ham away. To buy one of those players, Hill or Senesi, you might well go for Hill right now because he's cheaper. But any given week, I still think Senesi is a slightly better option, but we're talking minimal at this point. Then Elliot Anderson against Liverpool at home, and then Kruppi against West Ham away. So far down the list, partly because a lot of defenders that people own have got good fixtures, but also partly because of the benching that happened recently. And I don't know if it's a sign of things to come, but given that benching happened before players had come back, and they're starting to get more players back, like Brooks, I think, could be back soon, Tavernier as well, that doesn't seem great for Kruppi's minutes. And he always gets subbed early anyway. So I would probably have him quite low down in terms of where to position him for benchings this week. So let's get into some of your questions. And for the first one, I've grouped a bunch of questions together because there were a ton about Timber in particular and the Arsenal defence in general. So could Timber be benched this week? Should I sell Timber to Van Dijk? Should I sell Timber just in general? And should you get rid of double or triple Arsenal defence? Now on the benching, that hadn't really crossed my mind until I saw the question. I guess it's possible. They've just played on Wednesday. They've got to play again on Sunday. They've had a couple of bad results. Will Arteta want to make some changes? Maybe. But if I was predicting the Arsenal 11 right now, it would have Timber in it. Like, part of the reason he's played so many minutes this season is because he's massively preferred to Ben White. It's not like Ben White's been injured the whole season. He has had some injuries, but most of the time Timber just plays because Arteta prefers him. So, could Timber be benched against Spurs? I guess it's possible for sure. Would I predict that he will be? No, I don't think so. Basically, your decision to sell Timber, in my opinion, probably shouldn't be based on him being benched against Spurs. It should be for other reasons. I will say more generally, I think there's a massive overreaction to the double game week. Yes, it was really disappointing if you had double or triple Arsenal defence, unless you had Nketiah, of course, because he did really well. They didn't keep a clean sheet in either game. The fixtures coming up are not quite as good as they've had. I get that. But it's still a massive overreaction. Like, Arsenal defence is still the best in the league. Before the double game week, they had 4 clean sheets in 5 games, including the game against Liverpool. They kept a clean sheet against Chelsea in the Carabao Cup as well. This is a great defence. It's had a couple of not so good results. There's not many defenders in FPL that are better than the likes of Gabriel, Timber, etc. So while I think it's okay to sell them, because it's an away game against Spurs, new manager bounce, then it's Chelsea, they got a blank in 31, I don't think you should be, like, I always judge sentiment in FPL based on the kind of questions I get, and it almost feels like people have this need to get rid of them. Like, they're just terrible, they've got to go because they didn't do very well in the double. And I get it, right? It was frustrating, but like I said, I think it's a big overreaction. So, should I sell Timber to Van Dijk? I actually think that's kind of okay. Despite what I've just said, I kind of think that's okay because Van Dijk has got the goal threat. He's not bad for defensive contributions, certainly better than Timber, and the fixtures are better for Liverpool. So I think if you're basing it on 27 to 31, yes, Van Dijk is clearly better than Timber. And unless you're using a chip in 31, most people are going to have to sell 1 or 2 Arsenal players anyway. So if it was a choice between Van Dijk or Timber from 27 to 30 even, and obviously with 31 it gets even better, I'd prefer to have Van Dijk. But what I would say is when you're looking at your team, is Timber really your biggest problem this week? Because I think if you have to play him against Spurs away, it's fine. Chelsea at home, it's fine. Brighton away, Everton at home, also fine. So do you have other issues to deal with first? If you've got the luxury of doing Timber to Van Dijk, I don't mind it. I liked Van Dijk. I've got him in my team. But I wouldn't treat it as Timber's now terrible. And I know the attack and returns haven't been there. Ray has been outscoring him, etc. But he's not a terrible pick, is what I would say. Should you sell him in general? Look, if you want to go down to Hill at Bournemouth or Joachim Andersen at Fulham or someone cheaper to unlock funds elsewhere, it's probably okay. Because by game week 31, you're going to have to likely deal with Timber anyway. But it's not a massive problem. I really don't think it is. Like in any individual week, there might be someone better than your Arsenal defender. So this week, for example, despite what's going on at Palace, I'd probably rather have Munoz than Timber against Wolves at home. I'd rather have Chalobah against Burnley at home. But I wouldn't rather have Chalobah after this week. Like for the next 4 game weeks, there aren't many defenders better than Arsenal ones. Like someone's asked me about benching Gabriel and benching headaches. Like, what's going on here? Gabriel's amazing. So yeah, should you sell Timber? Sure, if you need the money for a different move. Or if you're going to Van Dijk because you think he's just good from now until 31. But for most people, I would just only do it when you really need to, which might be when you actually get to game week 31. Should you get rid of double or triple Arsenal defence? Again, I don't really see the panic. They're the best defence in the league despite what's happened the last couple of games. And by the way, in the Wolves game, and I don't want to take anything away from Wolves, right? I think they deserved probably to score in the end. But the first goal was a worldie. The second goal was a mistake from Gabriel and or Raya. Like it's not like they were dominated. The Brentford game, fair enough. They deserved to concede in that. That Wolves game could have been a clean sheet on another day. That worldie doesn't get scored. Arsenal were comfortable. Job done. I just think in general, because Arsenal seemingly are bottling the league again, although I still think they're pretty clear favourites, there's now that worry has kind of come into FPL as well. Like they're still one of the best teams in the league with the best defence in the league. Timber, Gabriel can get attack and returns, even if Timber hasn't done it very much recently. And look, if you've got like Saliba, fair enough. Saliba's a bit boring, right? He's not great for defensive contributions, not great from an attacking point of view. I get if you want to sell him. If you've got Raya, goalkeeper transfers, like, could you do Raya to Kelleher to free up some money? Of course you could, right? That's fine. If you want to do it, you've got the spare transfer. But for most people, goalkeeper transfers are the least of your worries. And if you've got Dubravka, you can just play him in 31 anyway. So, yeah, I was a little bit shocked is probably not the right word, surprised by the sheer number of Arsenal defender questions. And I know they didn't do well in the double, but they are still pretty damn good for FPL. So a couple of questions about chips. If I've already used my wildcard, is it a bad decision to free hit in game week 31 when I have Arsenal, Man City and Palace players already? Or should I save it for game week 34, which we know will be another blank game week? And then more generally, I've had a lot of questions this week about when should people use their wildcard, triple captain, bench boost, and free hit. On the first one, if you've gone early with your wildcard, there is absolutely no way I would be free hitting in game week 31. It's going to be way more useful to you, almost certainly. I can't guarantee it, but I'm like 99% certain that free hit will be more useful in game week 33 or 34. The thing with blank game week 31, although you might be loaded up on lots of Arsenal, City and Palace players, there's nothing to manage either side. So game week 30 is a normal game week, then you've got a blank in 31, then a normal game week in 32. Whereas for 33, there will be double game weeks. We don't know how many, we don't know which teams yet, but there will be some double game weeks. And in 34, there'll be another blank game week. So there's bigger stuff to kind of deal with. And the chances are, a lot of teams that are doubling in 33 will be blanking in 34. So either you free hit in 33 to get the double game weekers in, and then just don't have them in your normal team for 34, or you do it the other way around. Okay, so you play through 33, get players in for the double, then you free hit them out when they don't have a fixture in 34. That's going to be way more beneficial than using it in 31. So if I'd use my free hit or my wildcard already, there is no way I would use the other one until after 31. And which teams are going to double? Don't know yet, because it's based on the FA Cup and stuff like that. You could free hit in 31 and then hope that Arsenal, City and Palace all double in 33, but they might not. And that's your problem with setting up to use it right now. On the other chips, so wildcard, I don't think there's much incentive to use it until after 31 now. I know people used it a few weeks ago ahead of Chelsea, Man City fixture swings and stuff like that. Chelsea have only got one more good game now, and then the fixtures get bad. And yes, Liverpool, Brentford, Bournemouth, etc. are all coming into good fixtures. Is that enough to warrant a wild card? Like, you're so close now to getting the information about who's going to blank in 34, who's going to potentially double in 33. Like, between game weeks 31 and 32, we'll find out who's through to the FA Cup semi-final. Therefore, we'll know who's blanking in 34. You're not that far away from it now. surely you just wait. So if your team's not in a mess, I would absolutely hold my wildcard. I'd save the free hit for later on. By the way, if you've got wildcard and free hit left, and you've got like 3 City, 3 Arsenal, 3 Palace, and you really want to keep them, you could free hit in 31 and just use the wildcard later on. But again, it's difficult to know how well or how badly that might go, because until we get another couple of FA Cup rounds done, we don't have the information we need to kind of put a good strategy in place. Triple captain, I would just chill out with that. Like, you didn't use it in the first double, just wait till the next one. And if you're going to look to bench boost in the double in 33, there may well be another smaller double game week later on anyway, like game week 36. And if there isn't, you just use it in a single game week. So I just, like, would I be triple captain in Palmer this week? I don't hate it. It's a good fixture. He should start. The minutes should be good. But I think if you've not used it in the first double, surely you just wait for a double later on. Bench boost, the big question is, should I use it now or should I wait for a potential big double in 33? If you're saving your wildcard till later, which is my current plan, so to wildcard in 32, I feel like you might as well just save your bench boost rather than forcing it now. Because there is potential for 4 games to get called off in 34, which means 8 teams would have a double game week. And if most of those teams go into 33, that's potentially quite a big double. And so potentially a really good bench boost. I think basically, I've said this before, to use my bench boost before wildcard, I'd have to almost fall into it with minimal transfers. So you get to a game week, your bench looks great, you've hardly had to do anything to it, then maybe you would activate it. For everyone else, just chill out and just use it after wildcard. If you've used your wildcard already, I'd be much more keen to get the bench boost used as early as you can, basically. And then, yeah, free hit, you're probably saving it for 34, maybe 33. Do you use it in the blank or the double? Well, that really depends on... Basically, your decision about whether to use it in the double or the blank is based on which players you want for the long term. Okay? So if, for example, you want Arsenal players all the way from 32 to 38 and the same with Man City and they're doubling in 33, then because you want them for most of the time anyway, they're in your normal team, therefore you free hit in the blank because they don't have a fixture then. So although, and I know this question is going to come up loads, the free hit chip, if used in a double, will obviously score more points in isolation than if it's used in a blank because you've got more fixtures, but that's not necessarily the whole decision. The decision on when to use these chips is to get the most points overall for the rest of the season. So does that make sense? So really you should free hit the week where you don't want those players long term, essentially. But we can discuss that more when we've got more information. So wildcard, in my opinion, save it till after 31. Triple captain, wait for a double. Bench boost, if you've got your wildcard, probably hold on to it. Otherwise, if you can get a good bench out soon, do it. Free hit, personally, I would save it for after 31 in most cases. So is Konate viable if you can't get to Van Dijk, or would you look elsewhere? Interesting question. Is he viable? Yes. Because ultimately, he plays for Liverpool, and I think their defence is a little bit underrated. If you look at the expected goals conceded they've had for most of this season, they've been like a top 3 defence. So I would expect at some point for that to translate into more clean sheets. That could be soon, with Forest away, West Ham at home, Wolves away, Spurs at home in the next 4. So he's definitely viable, but I don't know if he's great value. Because at 5.4 million, he's not that much cheaper than Van Dijk. And with Van Dijk, you've got better goal threat and better defensive contributions as well. So it's almost like you're buying Konate because you can't get Van Dijk. But is he then the best defender to get? I think I would probably look elsewhere. Like, you could get James Hill for 1.4 million less, who, based on what we've seen so far this season, although it's a bit of a smaller sample size for Hill, is better for defensive contributions, and the fixtures are also pretty good. Now, Liverpool defence is good. Like, it's better than Bournemouth. So you could argue that it's worth paying for the clean sheets. But I almost feel like with defenders, you want something else as well. You want the defcons or you want the goal threat. And it's not that Konate can't get either of those things. He's just not brilliant at it. So I think if you've got 5.4 million, right, and buying Konate is not affecting any of your other transfer plans, then I probably would buy him ahead of like an Anderson or a Hill or a Senesi or someone like that, or a Brentford defender I know people are looking at. But if that's going to be the difference between getting the player you want or having to go for someone else, I would just buy a cheaper defender. So in short, Konate is good, but it is worth paying the money for Van Dijk if you can. and he's not so good that I would stop myself from being able to make another move, if that makes sense. So would you sell Haaland to Salah even if Haaland is available? And based on what we spoke about earlier, we know that Haaland is available. I think this move is viable, but I probably wouldn't do it in most cases, and I'd be even less inclined to do it this week, because I think Haaland against Newcastle at home is just better than Salah against Forest away. And unless you've got Cole Palmer, I think Haaland's the next best captain. So for me, it's Palmer number 1 against Burnley at home, then it's Haaland. So if you haven't got Palmer, selling, at least in my opinion, obviously you're welcome to disagree, in my opinion, selling the second best captaincy option for Salah just doesn't really make too much sense. I know some people don't have Thiago, and they're in a rush to get him, and so they want to do Haaland to Thiago, then a midfielder up to Salah. Again, I don't hate it. I don't think it's a terrible move. I just don't think it's necessarily a big upgrade, specifically this week. Now, Haaland does have a blank in 31. Then it's Chelsea away in 32. Then Arsenal at home in 33. So that span between 31 and 33 doesn't look that good. And if you're someone that's used a lot of their chips already, then having Salah the whole way through, where he's got Brighton away in 31, Fulham at home in 32, Everton away in 33, looks quite good. But there is going to be a chance that Man City double in 33. And if that happens, you're probably going to want Haaland, even though one of the games is against Arsenal. So I think it is viable, but I will say my current plan is to probably just hold Haaland through game week 31 and not lose the value on him. Now, that decision about whether whether you lose the value will depend on how much value you've got stored up in him. Some of you would have got him a lot earlier than others. If you go to I'm sure some people don't know how to do this. If you go to the transfers page on FPL and click list view on the right, you can see how much you paid, which for me is 14.2, how much he currently is 14.9, and then how much you can sell him for, which is 14.5. So if he stayed at that price of 14.9 and I sold him, it would cost me 0.4 to get him back. And because I know there's a very good chance I'm going to want him back after 31, I probably won't sell him. But if you are looking to do something different, you're not happy with your placement in your mini league or your overall rank, I think it's okay to take a punt on Salah. I really do. I know he's not done a huge amount recently, but West Ham at home 28, Wolves away 29, Spurs at home 30. They're quite nice fixtures. And you could go all the way and captain him if you wanted to. The only other thing to say about Haaland, I think he's viewed as someone that's not been great recently. And I think that's fair, especially when you put the context around how much he costs. But actually, he's not been completely terrible. If you look at the last 6 game weeks, for example, he was benched against Wolves, and I wouldn't see many benchings coming over the next few weeks. So actually, in the last 5 starts, he's got 3 goals and 2 assists. So he's averaging 1 return a game. Now, you want more than that, I get it. He's nearly 15 million. But we're saying that he's been rubbish, and he's still got 5 returns. So how good could it be if he starts playing really well? Which could happen at any point. So I genuinely think it's an okay move. I really do. And it might even be something I think about next week, although I probably won't do it, like as a differential. But I wouldn't be in a rush to do it this week. In my opinion, Haaland is just better than Salah for game week 27 specifically. So is it too late to buy Semenyo? He costs 8 million and blanks in game week 31, but his ownership is very high and can be a huge threat to my rank. I know a lot of people are concerned about that. Like, he scores at the weekend, everyone checks their live rank goes down, doesn't feel great, makes you feel even more strongly that you've got to bring Semenyo in. On a side note, by the way, I don't think checking live rank during the weekend is that helpful. And by the way, it's easier to say that than to do. I'm definitely not perfect. I do check my rank at times during the weekend, but I don't think it's great for making future decisions that are good for your team. Because you get into this spiral where every time Semenyo scores, you go and check. Your rank obviously goes down because you don't own him, and that feels bad. So you feel like you've got to bring him in, whereas it might not be the best move for your team. That's just a side note. Is it too late to buy Semenyo? No, but it will depend on your specific team. So for the next 4 game weeks, Semenyo is probably one of the best midfielders for 8 million or below if he continues to play 90 minutes every week. And right now, it feels like he probably will continue to play 90 every week. Man City will have Champions League soon. Semenyo will be eligible for those games. So his minutes might take a dip, either in Champions League, obviously, or in the Premier League. But right now, things look good. So he's a good option for the next 4 weeks. Can you bring him in and still manage game week 31? If you bring him in at 8 million versus getting a cheaper midfielder instead, does that still allow you to do all the other plans that you want to do? This is the stuff that you need to think about. If you said to me, I'm going to bring Semenyo in, but that's going to mean a 4-point hit in game week 31, like, is he that good? I would argue probably not. So if nothing else mattered, like we didn't have to worry about blank game week 31, there was only 4 game weeks left of the season, then yeah, maybe you bring him in. But I don't think he's miles and miles ahead of all the other midfield options. Like for me, next week, and I know it's a little bit different because obviously then I would have lost the Newcastle game. It's only 3 game weeks to go till the blank. But in 28, I've got a choice to bring a new midfielder in. 100% I'm just going for Wirtz. Like the fixtures are just as good for Liverpool, and he definitely plays in 31. And also, yes, his ownership is very high. That can hurt you if he does really well. It's also a potential opportunity. What if he doesn't do quite as good as everyone thinks he will, and you've backed against him? That will be good for your rank. So it depends what kind of manager you are. I think a lot of people see high-owned players this massive threat. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I own them as well, absolutely. But it's also an opportunity. And I think even if I was buying this week, I'm pretty sure I'd rather go Wirtz and save a transfer for 31 than go Semenyo. Your team might be in a different position. You might have 2 Arsenal, no Palace, and only Haaland. So you've got less to deal with in 31. You might be able to afford to get Semenyo in. But this idea that he's essential and you have to own him because he's so highly owned, I just don't agree with it. I think he's a really good pick. Like a really good one. If people own him already, they're absolutely laughing. But you can do okay without him. And there's a lot of midfield options right now. So if it makes more sense for your team to go for someone else, someone cheaper, whatever it might be, just do it. And just don't check your rank when Semenyo scores. So for my team, I think the plan pretty much remains the same. I'm going to look to roll to 2 free transfers in game week 28. As it stands, I've only got 1 free transfer and 1.4 million in the bank. And there are some upgrades that I can make, but I don't think there's very many meaningful upgrades that I can make for the long term, basically. So every week there's always players you don't own that you wish you did. I wish I had Chalobah in defence, but using a transfer to bring him in ahead of bad fixtures after Burnley at home just doesn't make any sense. Would I rather have Wirtz or maybe even Sharda or Utara or someone like that instead of Rice this week? Yes, if I was free hitting, I don't think Rice would be in the team, but he's still absolutely fine for Spurs away. And because we've got the blank to contend with in 31, every transfer has to be right. And of course, I could make a transfer next week and then get an injury or something like that, and it could be an absolute disaster. But I've got to be absolutely sure about every move I make. And I just don't think there's anything I want to do this week that I'm 100% certain about. So next week, I will probably sell Enzo Fernandez, and I will highly likely want to buy Wirtz, and I will need to fund that by selling Rice. But which player I sell Rice for, I'm not 100% sure about. And also, the Tavernier news has kind of changed things a little bit as well. If I can get a 5.3 million penalty taker instead of going for like a Utara at Brentford, that might sway me next week. If Tavernier gets minutes this week, I might want to go for Tavernier next week instead of Sharda or Utara or whoever it might be. So I just think the team looks pretty good. Like, I'm not panicking about Arsenal defenders. Even though it feels like everyone else is. And I know it's not literally everyone else, but I've had so many questions for this video about Arsenal defence. Kind of crazy. So I've got Raya and Gabriel. Do I expect a clean sheet against Spurs? Not necessarily. I think the pressure is starting to build on Arsenal. Spurs have got a new manager, etc. But Gabriel's still great. And I'd much rather play Raya than Dubravka this week. Van Dijk's already in place. Obviously, off the back of his 17-pointer last week, now people are trying to bring him in, so that's a nice position to be in. I'm still playing Joachim Andersen ahead of Senesi. I just think Fulham clean sheet chance is better against Sunderland than Bournemouth against West Ham. I mean, Noz, despite all the stuff going on at Palace, like, he's already in my team. So obviously, I'm just going to play him against Wolves at home. By the way, it might be that next week I decide to sell Munoz instead of Rice, because I don't need that much money to fund the Enzo to Wirtz move. So I'm basically going to remain open-minded. Like, there is a chance next week I could just roll again and go all in on 5 free transfers for game week 31. But I think I will deal with Enzo Fernandez. Midfield is Rice against Spurs away, double Man United against Everton away, Fernandez and Burma, which I think looks fine, and Enzo Fernandez against Burnley at home. And I know he's not done well the last couple of weeks, but I bought him like 4 or 5 weeks ago. I think it's 5 weeks now, and I've got 3 returns from him, so I'm not so worried about what happened in the last 2 matches. He's playing Burnley at home. It's such an easy hold. Thiago already in place. I held him through those more difficult fixtures to save some transfers. And then Haaland against Newcastle at home. And he'll be my captain because he's fully fit and available. So I feel quite good about that team. There is obviously a bunch of players I wish I owned, but I don't think any of them are necessarily urgent. So I'll roll to 2 free transfers, hopefully, unless something changes between now and tomorrow's deadline. And then Enzo to Wirtz, Rice to Sharda is my current thought, but that could change. I'll decide next week. So things looking good. Haaland captain, Bruno Fernandes vice captain. Hopefully we get lucky. Let's see what happens. Deadline stream tomorrow will start at 11:30 a.m. UK time because we've got a slightly later deadline of 1:30 p.m. UK time. So please do join me for that. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a lick. Did I just say lick? Make sure to give it... Do you know what? I've recorded this section a few times. I'm just going to leave that in. Make sure to give it a like, not a lick, because that would be weird. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you tomorrow for the deadline stream.